Hello, David, and welcome back to RPTV. It's been quite a year since, or well, the 8 months since we've last seen each other. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us what has happened at your end of things at Dixon Hall in the 8 months that since we've seen each other last.
Wow. Well, a lot has happened. In case you haven't heard, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and that has had the associated demands on community agencies that support the homeless community. And as a response to that, there have been a number of emergency sites open up to house and shelter men and women who are experiencing long histories of homelessness. And just the lay of the land currently is that, there continued the encampments, although did shrink at one point as we moved individuals into hotels, but they seem to be, the numbers seem to be growing again. And I mentioned hotels. Dixon Hall has opened 3 hotels in response to a couple of things. In response to making sure that physical distancing was provided in the shelter system so that we would be mitigating the transmission of COVID-19. And we opened up 2 other hotels in an effort to house and shelter individuals who have long histories of homelessness or who are moving actually directly from encampment.
So yes, this is the thing that I remember the last time we were speaking was that you were saying that there was a kind of a tremendous lack of housing options that you could offer people, but that has changed a great deal.
I don't know that it has changed, Dimitri. I mean, there's still housing options. The hotels are being treated as shelters, so they're temporary responses. At this point, there have been a number of working groups. One is the task force on shelter recovery, looking at, I sat at that table along with 12 other peers from across the city who work in the housing services sector. And, the response and that task force document lies out some very clear expectations and hopes and dreams that we continue to create the housing that we need to in order to respond A, to the pandemic, but to B, to the housing crisis that predated the COVID-19.
So how would you describe that difference between the housing that's been provided now by the city through the rental or the lease of these hotels and the long-term issue of homelessness? I understand from reading and you were just mentioning this, that these are temporary solutions. Can you talk about that for a bit?
The task force did articulate the need to look at these hotels as a longer term intermediary support to until we get the housing created. There have been 2 modular housing sites approved and construction has begun. One on Harrison in downtown West and one in the Scarborough neighborhood. And so those will be 250 units. And modular housing is an ideal response in the short term because their construction time is quicker and it provides us with an opportunity to build the supportive housing that we are committed to building through the housing TO plan. I think that the hotels have provided us with and afforded us really an opportunity to better understand the populations that are needing to access those services, to recognize the need for supportive housing and to reinforce that amongst the constituents who live in those neighborhoods, and to reinforce the value of an intermediary response to homelessness.
So, but overall, would you say that the response from the city has been kind of beefed up more than it was before. Like on their side that is dealing with all of this, they listed like a huge amount of services and supports that they're offering now for homeless people.
30 sites have been opened that are temporary sites. And would I say that the city has done a good job? I would say that the city has done a pretty remarkable job in partnership with the community agencies that, like Dixon Hall, like Fred Victor, like Homes for a Society, who have done this work in opening up these sites. It also has accentuated the real challenges of homelessness in our city and has demonstrated that there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And this is what happens when you ignore the housing ecosystem for more than a decade. So I would suggest that the city has mobilized in response to an emergency, which the city is very good at doing. But in terms of the creation of housing, we're still a long way from creating the supportive housing that we need to create and build in order to meet the needs of the growing numbers of homeless men and women in our city.
So do you see the city more inclined to looking at the homeless situation?
I do.
More...
I see all levels of government stepping up to the plate. I think the task force has demonstrated and articulated pretty clearly what their expectations are and what needs to happen. It has given a little bit of a bump to the housing TO plan, recognizing that the need for supportive housing is a critical piece of mitigating any housing strategy and homelessness in our city. And the federal government actually articulated that they want, through the response to COVID, to end homelessness in chronic homelessness in the city in the country. So this is not just a Toronto problem, but given that we're the largest jurisdiction and the most populated jurisdiction in Canada, the problem is unique and more challenging, perhaps, than other jurisdictions.
Yeah, so all of the elements are intensely interrelated. So one of the things that has happened with some of the hotels, the shelters that have been opened up in different areas, they've had quite a bit of pushback from the residents where those places have appeared. And I guess, and this does tie into the bigger picture of homelessness altogether. So when shelters appear in a neighborhood, the short-term sort of view from the residents is that these places are extremely a problem for people. Can you speak about that a little bit? I mean, like I know where I live, there's the Bond Place Hotel is opened here, and it's certainly, when I've spoken with people in this neighborhood, people are very concerned, and that. So what can be done about changing that argument and that discussion?
It's a very good question, Dimitri. And we are the operators at the Bond Hotel, and it is a concentration of men and women who are homeless and have had long histories of homelessness. The opportunity is to begin a different kind of dialogue and discourse with the community. But that takes time. And again, I understand people's concerns, and they're genuine. I acknowledge their genuine concern. It's also important to acknowledge that many of the men and women who are living at the Bond Place Hotel are men and women who have come from that neighborhood and have been living in encampments in that neighborhood prior to our arrival. So what we bring with us are a certain level of support and resources, and we are better resourced than we have been in a very long time. So what we have access to are health support, mental health and addiction support, and a robust staff team to respond to those needs. It's not fair for anyone, and particularly for the residents of the Bond Place Hotel, to have such a concentration of need in one place. That's a really deep challenge, and that's why we speak about smaller, responsive, supportive housing opportunities that need to come from the crisis that we're experiencing with COVID-19 right now.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that the perspective has to change for people have to be able to see that homeless people and lower income people are the same as everyone else. So I know that the response has been that where the shelters have come up is that that these people are dangerous. They're all the sort of stereotypes that go with being homeless or living in poverty. So that kind of thing has to change very much. Yeah.
Yeah, it really, I mean, nothing like a pandemic to lay bare all of the challenges and inequities in our society. And it certainly has done that. And homelessness, anti-Black racism, the challenges, the overrepresented population of Black men and women, Indigenous people in the homeless community is clearer, and the LGBT community as well is clearer to us than it's ever been. And I think one of the things that your community members are experiencing is a new kind of evidence of homelessness, and then a new visibility of homelessness.
Yes.
Because that neighborhood has changed dramatically. And the change has not been that there are more homeless people necessarily, but what it has been, it has laid bare the deep needs of those men and women and the trauma that they've experienced and how that trauma is manifest in their relationship and their work that and their lives on the street. So our opportunity here is to sort of make sure that they get access to the services that they need and embed the services that they need in the program here, and to make sure that they transition to supportive housing elsewhere.
Is there anything else that you want to say? Because this is really just a sort of touch back with each other to see how things have gone. Is there anything else that you think we need to speak about in terms of what Dixon Hall is doing, the hotels and so on, the shelters system?
I would just say that it has been as intense a time as this is for all of us, and our anxiety around the pandemic and our concerns about ways forward and how our lives have changed since the March 15th declaration thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
We have been working tirelessly, and I say tirelessly, which suggests that it's not tiring, maybe, but it surely is tiring, and it is a lot of work for all of us. And the work moving forward, in some ways, is just beginning. But what we hope comes from this is that there will be a new kind of solution-focused, community-engaged response to homelessness, and that we find the solutions that make us and support us in maintaining the kind of city that we want.
Well, I'm very interested in seeing how the housing that you were mentioning that is being built turns out, because I think that is a great direction that everything can go forward towards. I think so. Like, what do those units look like?
They're prefab units, which helps to expedite the construction. They are, there's design teams involved. They're working very hard to make sure that they fold into the existing architecture and landscape in the neighborhoods where they will be, and they are. They don't stand out as social housing. They in fact look like a regular apartment building, but they will be supported, and that 24-hour support is a key component of any supportive housing model. system and what modular housing looks like. It's not the only response, though. I mean, it's important to understand that there's a toolkit that and some things that have happened through the reality of COVID, which are really heartening. We have a rapid rehousing response, housed several hundred, I think it's like 400 individuals in Toronto community housing. So individuals who were homeless, who were moved into the housing programs and into Toronto community housing building. That will provide them with an opportunity to have lease with Toronto community housing and to become tenants there. That's a significant piece of this work. I think the rapid rehousing strategy will have legs and will continue to be a part of what happens going forward.
Mm-hmm. So the two locations that you were mentioning, where are they again?
One in the downtown west and one in the downtown east. The city of Toronto website will tell you exactly.
So
yeah,
they're not.
The one in the west end is at 150 Paris.
So they're not really. So my question is, they're not moving people outside of the normal area that they've been living in.
Well, I think there's some of that, right? I mean, there will be some of that. I mean, there are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of challenges that we need to consider when we're doing this work. It might be ideal if people weren't moved outside of the neighborhoods that they're accustomed to, but generally, if we embed support services, then we will help to mitigate some of those concerns from people. I do hear, ideally, we would like to live close to our existing services, but if we can embed existing services in those programs, and hence supportive housing we're talking about, then we will help mitigate some of those locational concerns.
Mm-hmm. So that looks like quite a lot of manpower that you will have to add to these projects. Would that be true?
Oh, I mean, so the successful proponents of those two sites are, I think it's public information, CODA and Toronto Neighborhood Group. So that, I would imagine, we're all faced with some very unique challenges around supportive housing and around staffing. And in the midst of this crisis, that has been a real challenge for all of us. Real pressure on our HR resources.
Okay, I think that's it, David. Thank you very much. One more time, just to go around, is there anything else that you think we need to speak?
I think that's good, Dimitri.
Okay.
Nice to see you again. Hope you're well.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll come back and check with you in a little while, and see how things are going then.
Great.
Okay. Thank you very much, David.
Please do not forget to like, comment, and share to our channel. Follow us on all our social media platforms. And for more information, please check out our website.